Good afternoon. Well, let me see. It's evening now, isn't it? Okay, good evening slash afternoon, whichever one. We welcome you here to our second series on the East Cleburne Legacy dialogue series, and that's exactly what it is. We want it to be a dialogue. We want this series to be one where we can talk about those things that we may not have known about, particularly the people that we may not have known about. So we welcome you here. Every month we will be doing this through the month of April and perhaps even in May. You're going to meet some interesting people right here from Cleburne, Texas, that you may have never heard about and certainly have not met before. So we welcome you. I'm going to ask Reverend Warren if he will come and do the invocation, and then we're going to go ahead with your program as printed. If you want a printed program, we'll get somebody to give you one. They are, yes, Miss Katherine Easdon. We'll make sure that you get one. And we also have refreshments, so take advantage of those. I'm already eating mine, so. But, and don't hesitate. We're not formal, so if you want to get up while we're going through the program and go over and get you some cheese and crackers and water, just feel free to do so, okay? All right, we're now going to ask Reverend Warren if he will come, make remarks, and give the invocation.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we are so grateful that you have been generous with us one more time. In the words of our ancestors, you came by our individual homes, touched us with a finger of love, and gave us the opportunity to open our eyes and behold your glory one more time. We come in the matchless, marvelous name of Jesus, for he said one day, anything our hearts desire, ask it in his name. We beg forgiveness for those times when we have done those things according to our will and ignored your command. We pray that you will forget them. We're thankful for these who are here this evening. We ask for bountiful blessings upon them and their loved ones. And even when they leave this place, we ask you to stay with them. We pray for our nation, our leaders, the nations abroad and their leaders. Help them to understand that they've just been appointed for a little while. We thank you, we praise you, we give you honor and glory, for it's in his name we pray. Will you help me say amen? Amen. This evening I want to begin by thanking Mrs. Easdon again for her effort and interest in making this program possible. Also, I want to thank the members of the committee, Ms. Lisa Majors and Ms. Stephanie Montero and her staff at the museum, and Reverend Dr. Johnie Dollarhide in her effort in putting all of our exhibits together. There are just some things that ladies can do. Now, you men don't get mad about that, because I hope you understand. These posters and everything, she put them together. I would have just pasted pictures on them and that would have been it. Amen. But as she said, this afternoon is our second effort of a series of programs to bring to your attention the history of what has been known as East Cleburne and the existence of Booker T. Washington High School. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Dollarhide, and he will follow the program.
Thank you, Reverend Warren. We're going, now that you have programs, we're going to follow this program just as it's printed. So those who are on the program, if you'll just come up during your time, and we'll go from there. Ms. Easdon.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katie Easdon. I am the recreation manager here for the city of Cleburne. We're so excited that y'all are here and for y'all to be a part of this with us. They have a lot of information to share, and I'm excited that we're able to hear about it and to learn about it. It's an honor to be able to host it here and just to be able to be a part of the program. Booker T. Washington has a lot of different programs and activities that go on throughout the year, and so if you ever want any information, please feel free to let me know. But Booker T. Washington Recreation Center has been open for about 10 years, and so actually it'll be 11 in February. February 2009, I believe, is when we opened, and so we're excited to have this program here and be able to learn the history of Booker T. Washington High School and the East Cleburne. Also, quick thing, a few little housekeeping rules. The restrooms, if you want to walk out this swinging door right here, goes into the kitchen, go to the hallway, and they're right down the hallway for the restrooms. And as Dr. Dollarhide did say, there are refreshments and waters. I'll set some more waters out there in a few minutes for everybody to enjoy. So please let me know if y'all need anything.
You'll notice on your program, we did include the Leyland Museum, but our director thought she couldn't be here today. But I told Reverend Warren the best thing to do is put her name on it, because I feel she'll be there if she can. And surely enough, Miss Montero. So where there's representative, there will be Miss Stephanie Montero.
I'm Lisa Majors. I'm Director of Community Relations for Cleburne ISD, and it was such an honor to be asked to be a part of this community. I'm especially excited to hear from two Cleburne Yellow Jackets tonight who have brought a lot of honor to their alma mater, and so I'm just very excited about that. I do want to share, last month's first series was tremendous, and I'm very excited. I'm working with someone who was in attendance that night who grew up in East Cleburne as a member of the Hispanic community that called. Just down the street, actually, her home place, and we talked about it, and she agreed to let me tell her story, so I'm so excited to be adding that to what we're putting together. So it's just going to be a great night, and we're going to have so much fun.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Montero. I'm the manager of the Leyland Museum and the Cleburne Railroad Museum. Those are the two city history museums. And on behalf of the entire staff and board, we're so thrilled to be part in some small way of this series. We're so excited to be able to accumulate a lot more information on the history of East Cleburne, which is just fascinating. And going by the first one of these talks, I think this whole series is just going to be so phenomenal. So glad everybody's here tonight and hope everyone enjoys it.
Amen. Thank you.
And I think we've heard remarks already from Reverend Warren, who is the outgoing president of the East Cleburne Ministerial Alliance. And we're going to hear from the incoming president, Reverend Bill Wright, in a few minutes. I do want to recognize our videographer. I guess that's what you call yourself, Mike. But my colleague and friend, Dr. Mike Itashiki, is doing all of this. If you go to, I know if you go to Facebook, you can see it. If you go to YouTube, you can see it. And he is doing all of these things, even making it available to the faculty at Hill College if they should want to show some of these series in their classroom. They can check it out through the library, or I think Joe, the one who's over library services, is setting that all up. So we're so thankful for him for giving of his time freely. So we've made him a member of the committee so that he at least can get the recognition. You want to say anything, Dr. Mike?
Well, there's, 5 more to go?
Yes, yes.
So make sure you see all of them.
And and it's on YouTube now. You can pick it up on YouTube. That is correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I want to give a really, really good, special thank you to Matt Smith. He is, it is Matt Smith, isn't it? Is it Smith?
That's it.
All right, I got it. Yeah, I should know after 5 years. So. But but Matt did a beautiful write-up of our first series, and stayed through the whole thing. You know, many editors and correspondents and all don't do that. They'll get just enough notes to go back and write up half of the article of what really happened. But he stayed right here, had a beautiful article, and we just cannot thank him enough for the support that he gives. So thank you, Mike. Our series tonight is focusing on athletics and athletes from East Cleburne who have been very, very successful in the area of athletics. We will introduce our two special guys who made it all the way to the NFL in a few minutes. But right now, we're going to take a look at the road they had to travel and the shoulders that they stood on in the field of national athletics to get where they're going. So we're going to start with Reverend Bill Wright, who has a presentation just on the effects of segregation in America. He's going to give a very short presentation. We always like for our series to include the broader community of America, and then we come here to see that in Cleburne we're not that much different from everybody else in America. And we can be very proud of East Cleburne. So Reverend Wright will come. He is pastor of Emmanuel Seventh-day Adventist Church. I started to say temple, but it's not temple, just Emmanuel Seventh-day Adventist here in Cleburne. He's going to give us a little overview. And then I want to call your attention to the poster with what we always say old, but the Negro Baseball League, which truly came out of a segregated America, but opened the doors to help bring us all together, the doors of integration. This group in athletics led that way. So let me have Dr. Wright, Bill Wright, to come, and then we will go from there.
Good evening. I was looking at the topic that was given to me, and I'm going to present it in a way just sort of tied in the effect of segregation as we looked at it. As an African American person, I came up in a segregated neighborhood, just like you have here in East Cleburne. You have the east side over here, and you have the west side. Where I came from, you had places called Newtown, which is a section of town for all the blacks. You had a place called Sunset. That was another place for the blacks in the city of Texarkana, Texas. Then you had an area, I'm not sure what they call that. That's where no, that's my place, Rose Hill. I was going to leave that for last. You had a place called Newtown, and then there was one place called Wamba, and then there was an area in Texarkana going east that was up in the courts in that area.
Oh, yeah, Stephen.
So you had those sections where everybody knew that's where the black populace lived. And so how did it affect us as individually? Well, as a student coming up, my parents never taught me anything about white or black, anything like that, just people. And that's how I came up with that mindset, just people. And one thing being black, I finally learned that there was a little problem being black. I went to a place in my hometown. It was a departmental store. And I walked in, because I walked everywhere from Texas to Arkansas. And I came to this place as a teenager, and I saw two signs. Saw two water fountains. One had it written on there colored, and one had it written on there white. And so I'm standing there looking at the water, and I'm trying to see white water, trying to see colored water. I was puzzled as a young person, and I kept looking. So I saw a lady. I said, I have a question for you. This sign says white. This water fountain says colored. I said, can you explain that for me, please? I said, I don't see any colored water coming out of here. So she looked at me strange. She said, well, where it says white, that's for people like me. Where it says colored, that's for people like you. I said, that's what that means? She said, yes. I said, okay, thank you very much. I went to the white fountain and drank all the water I could. I drank and I drank and I drank. And then I said, it's time for me to get out of the store. Because after she told me that, I said I knew there might be a little ruckus in that store. So I went on my way to Arkansas. But that was the divide that we had. One night I was walking down the street. I never bothered anybody. Then a car pulled up full of young white guys, and they just threw out brick after brick. And I was puzzled because why would they throw bricks at me? I didn't quite understand that. Parents never taught us that. Our neighbors, where we used to stay in Arkansas, were all white. And so that just puzzled me just to see them do that. And it kind of worked on my mind. So I picked up two of those bricks, and I said, if I see a car look just like that car, I'm going to let those bricks fly because I'm not bothering anybody. I'm minding my own business, out here walking. Well, later, good Lord cooled me down. I got to the house and explained what had happened. And then my mom shared with me some of the things that was happening at that time. But I attended Dunbar Junior and Senior High School there in Texarkana. Never thinking about segregation, but that's what it was. We were segregated to a place, okay? And I didn't even know the name of the Texas high school. I learned about that later when they brought in integration. But how did it affect us as young people? Well, we were taught well at Dunbar High School. Also in our middle school, we were taught quite well. We called it elementary back in those days, kind of combined together. And our teachers taught us, we learned, we did well, went to high school, did well. I missed some classes I didn't have to take, which I'm proud of. I didn't have to do biology because every day for 3 hours, where was I? Inside of electronic class, learning about electronics, things of the future. And that paid off for me. But later in life, when it came to woodworking, I was a little disappointed I didn't learn woodworking because you could build whatever you wanted to build. But now I still use my skill sets in electrical engineering, electronics, doing things around the house or for people. For a lot of young people, after integration, they could see some of the things they missed. Why? Because the schools where the whites attended had better resources and all of that. Well, for some of them that affected them academically, for others it did not. We made work what we had, ladies and gentlemen. Now, how did we arrive at having black and white schools in America? How did we arrive at having black and white schools in Cleburne, Texas? Let me give you a little background. Why did we have Booker T. Washington High School on the east side of town and Cleburne High School on the west side of town? Why did we have that? We have to go all the way back. How did it all begin? Looking back at our nation, Abraham Lincoln won election in 1860 as the first Republican president on a platform pledging to keep slavery out of the territories. Now, when he did that, 11 states did not agree with it. So what do? They seceded from the Union, and they formed what is called the Confederate States of America, a country within the country. But now they're saying what? We are separate. We don't have anything to do with you. Why? We want to keep the slave trade. We want to keep the slaves. And so war broke out. We called it the Great Civil War. Who were some of those states? There's one in particular. South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee. Can you guess the last one? You said it right, Texas. And Texas still talks about what? Seceding from the nation. Texas said, nobody tells us what to do. That's just the way Texas has always been, ladies and gentlemen. Texas seceded February 1, 1861. Since that time, we have had a great divide here in America. Not sure what that was all about. Let me move this way. Well, the Civil War started because of uncompromising differences between the free states, called the Union, and the slave states that made up the Confederate Federation of States. The slave states wanted the slaves. The government says, no, we're going to prohibit slavery altogether in all territories. As a consequence, the big fight started. That's how the Civil War started. Who were the first ones to push it? The Confederate States. April 12, 1861, Fort Sumter, South Carolina. They surprised and ambushed the Union soldiers. And the war ended a little later in 1865 when Robert E. Lee, the general, surrendered the last major Confederate army to General Grant, April 9, 1865. That's how it all began. What was the last battle fought in Texas? Oh, by the way, can anybody tell me what Cleburne was to the Confederate nation? Cleburne. It was a place where General Cleburne, that's the city is named after him. So when you think about General Cleburne, you think about the Confederacy. He is a person, the general, who was in charge down here, and this was a place where they brought the soldiers and sent them off to war. Cleburne, Texas, ladies and gentlemen, for the Confederacy. The last battle was fought at Palmito Ranch, Texas, May 13, 1865. When you think about Palm, that takes you where? Takes you south. So down in South Texas, 12 miles from Brownsville, Texas, was the last great war, the Union and the Confederates. On Texas Highway 4. Highway 4 is also right here in your city. So it runs long distance, ladies and gentlemen. How many soldiers died? Some fighting to free people, others fighting to keep them enslaved. Two writers, William Fox and Thomas Livermore, put it this way: 620,000 soldiers died from combat, accident, starvation, and disease during the Civil War. A recent study puts the number of dead as high as 850,000, ladies and gentlemen. I really want to find out how many Confederate soldiers and how many Union soldiers died, but I have not been able to get that data as of yet. I will keep searching. Well, how did it all begin? When did slavery officially end? Well, due to the Union measures such as the Confiscation Acts and Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, the war effectively ended slavery, even before ratification of the 13th Amendment in December 1865. This formally ended the legal institution of slavery throughout the United States of America. But you know, folks, slavery is still here in some places. Education. How did it all begin? How were schools established for blacks now that slavery is over? Well, the nation's first black public high school was Paul Laurence Dunbar. Opened its doors in Washington, D.C. in 1870. Way before my time, some of your time also. Now, how were the schools established? Why do we have this place right here? Why do we have the Booker T. Washington School over here on the east side and the Cleburne School on the west side? Well, the southern states created a dual educational system based on race and race alone. That's why when you came along way back Doc Warren's time, it was what? Black school over here, go across the track, and you have the white school over here. That's the way it was, ladies and gentlemen. It's called the dual educational system based on race. Was it equal? Absolutely not. But again, if you were a certain color, this is where you went. So all blacks were relegated to come to the school over here on the east side, Booker T. Washington. These separate schools were anything but equal. Therefore, something that was called the Freedmen's Bureau was established in 1865 to aid formerly enslaved African Americans. That's how many of them got help, ladies and gentlemen, through this agency. And we praise God for that agency. Well, I hate to say it, but Cleburne, Texas, was one of those school districts that created a dual educational system based on race. And that's why we have the divide. The divide. And that's why you gentlemen were here at the school. Because of what? Segregation. Segregation. The whites did not want the blacks with their students because some thought that if they mixed them together, they merged them together, you was going to have what they call amalgamation of the black and the whites. Amalgamation is the term where young people come together and enjoy themselves together. How were the schools established for the blacks here in Cleburne? Well, Booker T. Washington was Cleburne's only high school for black students. Some of the people who are here today, Doc Warren, these two gentlemen, some of the others who are here, they attended that institution. In my town of Texarkana, I'm trying to find the tracks. We didn't have tracks over there where we were. It was off in Rose Hill. But a lot of the communities had what? Had the tracks. And where were the blacks? Across the tracks. Where were the whites? I always said they were on the other side of the track, which meant what? They were across the track also. You have to take a thing and look at it how? From a positive perspective, ladies and gentlemen. They say, you from the tracks? I said, yes, I am, and you're from the tracks. You're on the other side, right? Yes. Okay, we're both from the tracks. Amen. Praise God. You have to take a thing and look at it from a positive perspective, and when you do that, you're not down when somebody's trying to put you down and say, okay, you're from across the tracks. Now over here, you literally have the tracks over here, okay? But did it cause people to look strangely upon themselves over here? No, it did not. In 1904, this school was open officially. That's a long time back, 1904. Booker T. Washington High School. For blacks only. The white parents did not allow their kids to come over here, and probably some of the kids did not want that to take place. Well, what happened to the west side of town? That was the white part of town where the whites went to school, and that's where they stayed. It was called the west side of town. In 1965, what happened to Booker T. Washington School? It closed down, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Yes, integration came in. African American students went somewhere. Not that the whites came to the black school. And that was a strange thing when they talked about integration. They closed all the black schools, all of them. And some were bused to, quote, the white schools. I'm not sure if they had busing here. I couldn't find anything historically on busing here in Cleburne. But in other places where I have been and worked, they were busing the students, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, when the merging took place, I call it the great merger of America. When it took place, there were some challenges. When I say challenges, terrible challenges. Name calling, riots around the country at schools, only because somebody was white and somebody was black. Isn't that amazing? We all came from one drop of blood, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say that. Cleburne High School opened in 1887, but it has gone from one point to another point. The place called Gwynn Justice Center, that place is a place that the school, Cleburne School, used to be on. And later it became known as the college, the Central Building, and then it was called the Fulton Building. It burned in 1916, and then they put up this other place, and now we have the new Cleburne High School. And most of the research I did talked about the new Cleburne High School over here on Nolan River, trying to get that street right. Okay. And it's a great high school, has had a great history. The students are there. They're doing well, what? Being merged together. And this has brought on what we call quality education, not just for the white students, but also for the black students. And I'm very thankful for that. The resources are there. And in a lot of places, that is still not the case. How did we desegregate? Who was the first person to desegregate an all-white school? Ruby Nell Bridges Hall, born September 8, 1954, was the first African-American child to integrate the all-white William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans. And that was in 1960. Did it cause a crisis? Yes, it did. Think about Little Rock, Arkansas. Did it cause a crisis? Yes, it did. I was back there. My wife attended that school. She attended Horace Mann, quote, the black school, okay? But now it was going over to Little Rock Central, and that was something else. Those of you who are about my age, you know what happened because you used to see it on TV. Those in their 70s. I'm way over there in the 70s, hanging on for dear life. Amen, praise God. But you know, despite the 1954 ruling that knocked down segregation of our public schools, many school districts remain segregated. And so is the case of us there in Texarkana, Texas. That's why we were still I was at Dunbar. Dr. Dollarhide was at Dunbar. It was ironic that we ended up here in the same city. I came here first and then looked up. I said, I've seen that person before. Couldn't figure it out. And I kept looking at the name and finally figured out, you're from Texarkana. Her sister and I were classmates. Praise God, Georgia Carroll. Amen. The Texarkana School District did not officially fully integrate until the 1967-68 school year. I was gone that time. By that time, I was down at Prairie View A&M University. The Texarkana, Arkansas school system didn't completely integrate its district until 1970, showing you how much people still want to hold on to their differences. And when the government finally put their foot down, they started the integration of the schools. But there's one town that I know of. It was on news recently, Cleburne, Mississippi. What's happening over there? As of 2017, it is still 100% integrated. A judge has ordered them, a federal judge that is, to desegregate its school district now. I'm not sure what has happened, but what they have done, they have kept it in the courts for 60 years and still counting. But it shows you how strongly people feel when it comes to the segregation. Why are we here tonight? Why do we have the separate, well, we have the one school now. At the time we had the two schools, we must understand segregation was the norm of the time. We couldn't do anything about it, couldn't make those changes. But there are people who what? Persevered. And I thank God for that. Because of that, the dual system that was set up to increase the knowledge of some and hamper the knowledge of others, that system was struck down, and we thank God for that. Today, here in the city of Cleburne, we have only one high school, Cleburne High School, where equal resources are available to all students in attendance. And for us who are not in high school, and we still want to make progress, let us press together, work together, work together, work together. And as we do that and love together, we will see great, even more successes here, what? For the city of Cleburne. God bless you. Thank you.
I want to thank Reverend Pastor Wright for that information. You'll notice that at each one of these series, we're giving a little history, an historical account of why these series are so important. And we hope that history will be something that we will grasp and take a part of. So often when things in our history are not comfortable, we don't want to learn about it and we don't want to talk about it. But the purpose of this series is to look at where we've come from so that we won't repeat it and go back again. We have to know our history. So each time you will get just a little overview of why this series becomes important, even on a national scale. And we chose the subject of integration with tonight's subject on athletics because it's probably one of the first fields where integration started to really make sense. When baseball players, particularly with Jackie Robinson, going from the all-Negro leagues and being inducted or drafted into the national leagues, which were then all white. And it wasn't an easy thing for the black players from the all-Negro leagues to go into the white leagues, like Willie Mays and some of the other players. But because they persevered, because they were able to come together, have that contact, we call it the contact theory in sociology, and began to see each other and understand each other as the same people wanting the same thing. I want to play ball. I want to feed my family. I am a person. I'm human. And so we owe a great deal of thanks to what we call the old Negro Leagues. I invite you to look at the poster that will discuss those leagues and give you some information. But because black ball players were not allowed to play with an all-white team, then the ingenuity of people like Rube Foster, I believe his name was, their ingenuity caused the formation of all black teams called the Old Negro League. Those teams had to play each other. Occasionally, they were allowed to play an all-white team, but that was always under protest. And there were managers who would not even allow that kind of team effort to be played in their stadium. And so our integration, our coming together like we ought to be, was bought with a price. And a lot of that price has come in the field of athletics. And later on, Reverend Warren will introduce two members, graduates of Cleburne High School, who made it into the National Leagues, the NFL. And they'll tell us a little bit about their story. But we're thankful for these men who actually, during the time of integration, had to endure all of the hardship, but they hung in there. They stayed there. And so they are the shoulders on which not only athletes stand, but we stand, because they helped us to form relationships through integration. I know it wasn't easy, but it was worth it. So we are focusing on the segregation as we look at this whole field of athletics, and we give a great deal of thanks to every athlete who are still having problems today, like Colin Kaepernick, when they, just by pointing out that we still have some work to do and are having problems because of that. But we can do it, and we're going to do it if we just look back, pay homage and attention to those who made it work in spite of all the difficulties. So I'm now going to introduce you. You heard from Reverend Wright about segregated life in the African American community. I'm going to introduce you to a a fellow member of society who's going to talk about life in Cleburne, a segregated life from the other perspective. And so Miss Linda Burt Wallace, if you will come and just share with us what's on your heart.
This has been fascinating, but let me tell you first, I am way out of my league and over my head in this. I so enjoyed your presentation. And this is a sidebar, but I was in the first class that was integrated. And believe me, it improved our school drastically. I really feel that way. We had some wonderful people come to join us in our class. I'm grateful to the committee for asking me to speak. I'm going to talk a little bit about growing up in East Cleburne and the childhood that I had. To me, East Cleburne was the pot at the end of the rainbow. It was a wonderful place to grow up. Just a block away, and you were in the country. It was like living in the country, yet you were near downtown. I lived at 788 Chase. It was a very quaint little 2-bedroom home that was built by Charlie Matthews, who was an East Cleburne resident and a builder here. And there was a vacant lot that my grandfather owned, and then 784 was my grandparents' house. 787 Barber, which is directly behind my grandparents, was my great-grandfather. Who could have had it any better? I lived with family. We were always together. And the only trouble I had getting to my grandfather's, if I didn't want to go around the dirt road, which was Michigan, just a little gravel road, I'd have to walk through the chicken barn, the chicken yard. And there was a rooster, a very mean rooster. And he would hide behind the persimmon tree, and you'd think he wasn't looking, and you'd get just about to the gate, and here he would come. And he loved nothing better than chasing screaming kids. And he did it quite well. I also wanted to tell you that the house that my grandparents lived in originally burned to the ground in 1952. There was a fire on Barber Street, and my grandmother and my uncle had gone over to watch the fire, because that's what you did back then. Watch the firemen work to put out the fire, and an ember landed on their roof and burned their house. So that's why they lived in a Charlie Matthews house, like so many of us did. Living on Chase was the next best thing to living in the country. My great-grandfather would farm some of the vacant lots on Barber, and he raised corn and watermelon and cantaloupe and cotton, and there was nothing better than walking through those watermelon fields just waiting for one to be ready. And I'm talking really big fields to a kid. My dad raised homing pigeons, and I can still hear that whooshing sound as they would circle around in their overhead flights every day when he would exercise them. My grandmother was a wonderful person. My mother worked out of the home, so I have to say she really raised me the most of my young life. She was a woman that never drove a car. She walked to town 3 times a week, and she lived to be 95. She taught me many things about nature, to respect nature, and to enjoy the simple pleasures. That was her big push. She said, dwell on the simple things. She also taught me how to wring a chicken's neck, but that's another story. We won't go there. On occasion, my grandmother and I would take the bus, which was a real treat, and it came down Chase, and I remember that it came down Trinity. We made the S-curve to East Henderson. When you got on, you dropped a little nickel in a glass jar, and the driver would click a metal piece, and the nickel would fall to the bottom. And why I remember that, but there again, it's the simple things that I remember. And then she would let me ring the bell when it was time to stop. As a kid, my boundaries of adventure covered a wide area from Boone Street at the Viaduct. That was my north boundary, East Henderson Street Baptist Church on the south, Brazos Street to the west, and Buffalo Creek on Mansfield Road to the east. The very same streets and roads that my father, Jerry Burt, who was born in 1928, explored when he was a child. We had a virtual back door of a wondrous little creek, the East Buffalo, and it could run wild and damaging after a spring rain, but most of the time it was just a little mesmerizing trickle. During my dad's youth, after a hard rain, he'd race to a plowed field on Mansfield Road, just east of the creek, to find exposed arrowheads that were left by the first residents of the area. I raced to that same area, but not to find arrowheads, but to stand on a fence and gaze at those wonderful Shetland ponies at the Gill Pony Farm. Just a little side note, I still have some of his arrowheads. My first and last ride on a bicycle to the top of the Boone Street Viaduct was in 1957, and I was 8 years old. Some of the older kids were headed there to coast down on high speeds and hold your legs out on the bicycle, and knowing I really shouldn't, I said yes. So who would have known that my uncle, Sonny Burt, would be working in the north yard for the railroad and see me in a place where he knew I was not supposed to be. My dad was a very smart disciplinarian. When a spanking didn't get the results, he knew the way to my heart, and it was through that pawn shop bicycle. He had paid $5 for my bicycle. But that bicycle stayed at the back door with a padlock on the chain most of my youth. He had a lawn chair for him, a lawn chair for my mom, and the bicycle, and he encouraged me to sit on it. But I didn't get to ride that bike until I was 13 years old. It was his discipline. I think I walked to Fletcher's store on Morgan between Chase and Sabine at least twice a day during the summer months. There was a vacant lot next to the store, and it had a little path that had been worn through it. It was very sandy soil. The Texas horned toad would bore shallowly under the soil in that pathway, out of sight but not out of touch. Have you ever stepped on a Texas horned? It's not fun. It's probably more frightening than hurt. As a kids, we didn't wear shoes in the summer. That was just the rite of passage, no shoes. We had a neighbor who was a smoker. Camels, no filter. When my uncle was older and had the job, he could no longer walk to the store for Mr. Kimbrough. Okay, I'll get that. I was next in line for the job. He would give me a quarter, and for a 20-cent pack of smokes, I'd bring him the cigarettes and give him the nickel. Sometimes he'd give me that nickel back, and it would mean another trip to the store. Do you remember how much a nickel would buy in penny candy?
I do.
It's probably the reason I have a weight problem today. Then there were the trains, lots of switching and banging, screeching, and lonesome train whistles could be heard day and night from the tracks that bordered East Cleburne on the west. One could set their watch by the shop whistle that told the men to go to work, to go to lunch, and to go home. The sounds became second nature to us. It was a part of everyday life. Those trains put food on the table and paid the bills for many families in Cleburne. They provided income for merchants, grocery stores, service stations, physicians, and they paid school and property taxes. The railroad had excellent insurance for families, and employees could see a local Santa Fe doctor for free. Many merchants gave credit to railroaders who paid the bills on the first of the month. A job with the Santa Fe was highly desired. My great-grandfather, grandfather, dad, uncle, and cousin each worked for the Santa Fe. It was a family thing. I started first grade at Santa Fe in 1955. I had waited and waited, one of those kids that wanted to go to school. My grandmother walked me to school on the first day. After lunch, the kids were let out for recess, and I thought I had had all of the school I needed, so I walked home. My grandmother immediately walked me back to school. She walked me to and from school for the first week, and then let me walk alone. I walked to school every day through my years at Santa Fe. The school seemed cavernous and looming to a 6-year-old. The first grade teachers were in the basement near the cafeteria and the restrooms. I had never seen a cafeteria lunch line before. All of our family meals were at home. So this was an amazing new experience for me. Milk was a penny a glass, and we got to draw it ourselves from a dispenser with a spring-loaded arm. These are the little things that impressed me as a child. And I know people are old enough in here to remember that. Opening that sack for lunch, well, it was frankly one of my favorite times. One of those simple pleasures my grandmother talked about. That was until 3rd grade and Mrs. Elsie Armstrong's class. She encouraged our creative side to evolve and always displayed every paper as if it were a piece of art. I believed she told every student that they were her favorite. Santa Fe had fabulous plays and pageants in the auditorium near Bess Ashley's classroom. We celebrated the seasons and the pioneers with plays, and the Christmas story was acted out by students from all grades each year. Was it an advantage or a curse that my dad and uncle shared some of the same teachers, even though there was a 13 age difference between Jerry and Sonny? Ironically, I shared some of those same teachers. As I came to learn, my dad was not the best student, and my uncle was exemplary. So it was that having the same teachers as my uncle was an advantage, but my dad, not so much. I was fascinated by the Oil Creek. Everybody remembers the Oil Creek on Trinity. And I can't really explain why, except that I was easily amused as a child, apparently. I always liked to pause and watch. It had an odor of creosote, and I passed this way on my trek to school. I would go to Peacock, to Robbins, to Royal, to Olive, and some days I would take Trinity to school from Chase, sometimes Sabine, sometimes Arbavada. There were many ways to get to from Chase to Santa Fe, and each street had its way of holding my attention. East Cleburne had a diversity of styles and homes, not unlike other parts of town. Many were craftsman style, cottage style, four-square, shotgun, farmhouse, and a few lean-tos, and these were built from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s. This was no cookie-cutter subdivision. One bought a lot and built the house that met one's needs. It would be interesting to know if any of these homes were from the plans and materials sold by Sears from 1908 to 1940. To my parents' credit, I have led a simple yet happy life. Having the opportunity to live in East Cleburne was a blessing to me. I was brought up in a working family, in a working community. During my formative years, I learned to respect people from all walks of life, to respect our elders, to have respect for property of others, as well as my own. My husband will tell you I still have some clothes and shoes I had from high school. Now, why, I don't know, but I do respect my property. I was taught to be generous and helpful and to be thankful for God's blessing. My mother set the example as a working woman to be good at your job and to be good to your job. With time, I have discovered that the simple pleasures in life make the best memories in the end.
All right. That's what we want to accomplish by putting on these various programs, is to let all of the citizens in Cleburne know, especially those who will pay attention to us, that what happened over here in this area, and there were just people living over here too. Some of them graduated from high school and went off and did great things. And we want everybody in Cleburne to know that, you know. The East Cleburne is not some third world country, you know. This is Cleburne, Texas, and we're all citizens of it. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Rodney Norton. He was a student at Booker T. Washington between grades 1 and 4 prior to the integration, and he graduated from Cleburne High School and went to Rice University and ended up being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he had a stint with them, and he'll tell you all about all of that. On your program, we have mentioned Dr. James Cash. He was a citizen here in East Cleburne. His mother taught school at Booker T. Washington. They later moved to Fort Worth, and where he attended I.M. Terrell High School. He graduated from there, and he was the first black on the TCU basketball team. He graduated from TCU with a math degree, and he finally ended up as an instructor at Harvard University, and later one of the deans on that campus. I think the last time I talked with him, he was getting ready to go to Europe because he had some job to perform over there. Jay Brazel, he graduated in 1947 from Booker T. Washington. He was a valedictorian of his class, and he went on to play a stint with some of the minor leagues in baseball. And I also want to mention, Reverend Dollarhide mentioned something about the old Negro League, baseball league, and just about 3 blocks from this campus, 707 Brazos Street, was a gentleman by the name of Richard G. He played with the New York Lincoln Giants, and his brother also played with them. They had about a 3 or 4 year stint with the Lincoln Giants. And I knew Richard G. personally. I don't remember seeing Tom G., but he was back and forth here. I think their original home was somewhere in Abilene, Texas. But at any rate, we will have Rodney Norton, and then after Rodney, we'll have Xavier Warren. He also had a similar stint as Rodney. Of course, Xavier did not attend Booker T. Washington, but he lived here in East Cleburne, and he was raised over here in East Cleburne, not very far from here. And he graduated from Cleburne High, and he went to college to Tulsa University, and he had a stint with the Pittsburgh Steelers also. So they will come to you in that order. Rodney, you want to come right on right now?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rodney Norton, and I grew up here in Cleburne, Texas. I have to enunciate it like that because I live in Houston. And every time I tell somebody I'm from Cleburne, they say, Cleveland? It's right up the road. And I said, no, it's Cleburne. But I want to give honor to God for being here and my family, Mamie and Lee Jesse Norton. Mr. Warren wanted me to make sure I mention that. But if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. And my sister, Norma Jean Bonner. Dr. Wright brought back a lot of memories. You set the stage for what I want to just briefly speak on and tell about my life and stuff like that. 1963, of course, everybody knows John F. Kennedy was killed in Dallas. And I was just frightened to death. Cleveland's 45 minutes from there. I said, well, he can just come right over here and just wipe out Cleveland, But that's the society that we live in. And also during that era, 64 was the civil rights movement. So I'm not proud to say it, but that's what allowed me to go to Rice and what allowed me to work for Procter & Gamble. 65 was the first year of integration for me. My mother told me I was going to integrate in 65. Wasn't going to wait till 66. My sister was the last class of Booker T to graduate. 65, right? That's right. We didn't have busing. We rode the streets coming in earlier. The bus just came across the whole street. I said, what's this? I had to ride my bike to Irving. I went to Irving. And then when I went to Cleveland High, I had to walk. I don't know how far that is, but there wasn't no busing. I can remember the first day of going to school. My mother said, she said, if they call you the N-word, she said, you just gonna allow that to their ignorance. And I looked at her, I said, Mama, I don't know if I can do that. I said, I don't know if that's gonna happen. I said, it depends on the circumstance. And to dovetail off that, Procter & Gamble, we had diversity meetings. We had Latinos, we had blacks, we had Asians, because again, segregation, nobody had broken through the glass ceiling to get into management with Procter & Gamble. So we were in a diversity meeting, and I got up and said the same thing. I said, well, look, I said, nobody's ever called me the N-word. And then a white lady, she looked at me. I think I'm about as big as I am now. She said, well, my God, Rodney, look how big you are. But that, I say that to say that it has never crossed my path in sports, in life, or anything. And I try to treat people like it. I'm not saying I've never had confrontations, but it's never been in a racial atmosphere, if you will. You've got differences now with people and everything, and that's going to take place, especially politics. Everybody has a difference of opinion. I can recall a conversation I had with my stepson. He was in disagreement with his father. And I said, well, look, Gino, I said, you don't have to agree with him. I said, you can agree to disagree. I said, but respect him. I said, he is your father, I know I'm getting off track here a little bit, but I haven't been in Cleveland for 47 years. I'm not saying that braggingly. It's just the nature of the business. You got to make a living. And so I do that in Houston, Texas. I graduated here in '72. I had a good background. I was a good student. I wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I wasn't the dullest either. That allowed me, my grade point average allowed me to go to Rice. And again, my athletic ability plus my grades, plus my community service, if you will, and I'm gonna just say my personality, But my growing up here in Cleburne, they say a village raises the people. It's unfortunate, but I saw Mr. Warren the last 3 or 4 times attending funerals to my mother's friends. The most recent was Miss Hazel King, Miss Marie, I think, who's Norma, our neighbor? Bobby Richards' sister. Oh, Elma. I think I saw you there, Elma's friend. And like I said, I'm glad to be a Cleburneite because it takes a village to raise a people and to a child, and I was raised by all of those ladies and families, and it's several more people that I came in. And a lot of people, I know you know, if you live here in Cleveland, you see that vacant building right there in the corner. That was Earl Williams grocery store. Everybody knew I worked there, Marvin, my mother, Miss Hazel. You know, that's where I grew up. That's how I learned to interact. And I tell people that's how I got my job with Procter & Gamble, working in the grocery business as retail. Again, but my ticket out of here was athletics. Cleveland had a pretty good team. We had a good district back then, and I was able to excel amongst other players. I'm not gonna say you can do it all by yourself because you gotta have teammates, and Cleveland had pretty good players, both black and white, and so we competed with the best, and so that allowed me to go to the next level. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I played with Joe Green. I got drafted by the Steelers. I participated in spring training camp with them. They fired me. Most people say they cut you, but they fired me. and I enjoyed that experience because to me that was a graduation gift, you know. And again, the money wasn't that big back when I was participating. I don't know about the money wasn't all of that. So you talk about a penny for a glass of milk. You know, I can remember when bread was 4 loaves for $1. You know, gasoline was like 10 or 15 cents a gallon. And again, NFL contracts wasn't all of that. You know, I had a 3-year contract. I think it was 24, 25, and 27 per year if you made the team. I got a signing bonus. I was fortunate enough to get drafted the last one in the 5th round. And again, to me, that was a graduation gift because once I got there, and everybody's experience is different. Once I got there, it was a job. They talk to you like coaches talk to you like you don't exist. And I said, I don't need this. I said, I got a degree from Wright. I can go to work. I can get a job. A guy that got cut with me coming back from Pittsburgh, he was in the car. He wanted to jump out the window. and I wanted to say some crazy stuff to him. I said, no, man, just go home and sit by the phone. I said, somebody go call you, you know. But he put all his eggs in the basket for that. And again, that experience allowed me to get the job with Procter & Gamble. I was fortunate to stay there 31 years. I retired in 2008. I'm now working for a little bitty black sausage manufacturer called French's. I sell boudin and Creole foods too. You can find my products in H-E-B, by the way. Right now, they have gumbo and etouffee based on sale. All you got to do is add the protein. That was my commercial there. It's called French's. French's, and you find it in your frozen seafood department. It's gumbo and etouffee base. All you got to do is add chicken, sausage, or crawfish or shrimp or whatever. That's what I do now. And again, my experience with Procter & Gamble, it's like riding a bicycle working for French's. You know, Procter & Gamble had me up at crack of dawn, and I wouldn't go to bed till midnight. But again, that's the retail business. And again, Earl Williams' experience allowed me to do all of this. I got off track now. Where am I? What I wanted to speak, when Mr. Warren approached me with this, I thought the audience would be young adults, athletes. and my message to you, if you will, is leadership. You know, he talked about segregation and the society that we live in, but each individual has to accept responsibility of leadership of how they're going to fit in society and the world. Because you can't predict or project what anybody's going to do. You know, the White House is evidence of that right now. But that can't continue. And society, you know, you spoke about Cleveland, I think Cleveland, Mississippi. I'm gonna have to look that up. That can't exist. You can't revert back. People cannot allow that to happen. Just like wringing a chicken's neck. We can't allow that to happen. I don't think that's going to take place anymore. Because see, my grandmother, they did that. But again, this is my home, and you know, I'm proud of it. But again, I can't make a living here. You know, somebody talked about the whistle. I asked my sister, it was 4:30, and I said, did the whistle blow? I don't even know if it still does it or not. And I got another story. We lived on Robin Street, right there by the shop. We eat dinner at, my daddy got 4:30, we eat dinner at 4:35. One day I was sitting there eating, I had a mouthful of food, and my dad said, who's that over here turning that bottle of wine up over here? And I said, how the hell did he see that? But he was looking across the fence. I think you spoke about somebody in your family. Nobody probably knows Marvin, but Marvin and Glenn, we all, as kids, we had beer in our car, you know, beer and wine. So we popped the trunk, you know, nobody was at home. We was at my house. But my dad was looking across the fence. I almost choked eating dinner. But that's Cleburne. I mean, you know, Santa Fe supported everybody, both black and white. And it was a luxurious career for everybody. But I said, that's not me. I said, I'm not doing that. And, you know, like I said, I'm not saying this to brag, but I left in '72 and I haven't been back. But that's about all I have to say. Sports was my ticket out, but sports is not everything. You got to take all of your life experiences and you know, treat people right. So I enjoyed the opportunity to share some of that with you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Right. Y'all keep clapping for me if you want to. All right, there you go. All right, real quick, my name is Xavier Warren, and I'm a lifelong Cleburneite. I don't live here now, I live in another city. When I was called on by Reverend Warren to speak, again, I was thinking about a younger group of people and students and children and that kind of thing. So what I'm going to, and I jotted down a few notes, I'm going to try to be swift, but I don't want to rush. I'm going to leave a lot of blanks just in case somebody wants to ask me questions of me about something, and we'll go from there. So I may go backwards to go forwards, and I'll go back and forth, but I'm going to try to link this thing all together pretty good. I grew up here in Cleburne, like I said, grew up on the east side. My athletic career kind of started at home. I'm one of 5 children. I'm the youngest boy of 3 boys, and I had the opportunity to learn from their mistakes just by looking at them. And they didn't have that luxury. So when we were growing up, and we're all in order, stair-step, one year after the other, I felt like in my heart I had to grow up quicker. I consider my peer group people 10 years above me and 10 years below me for some reason. So right here in these streets of East Cleburne, there was a lot of competition, racing up and down the street, playing basketball, those kind of things. So that's where I got my earliest taste of athletics and being an athlete. I know my stuff's, I have a lot of football stuff, but I am not a football player. And I'll tell you why in a little while, okay? But early on, again, at home, in the neighborhood, I went to Santa Fe Elementary. And Santa Fe was where I really cut my teeth athletic. We had those field days and those kind of things. Well, in my 5th grade year, after my 5th grade year, Santa Fe shut down. We had a race problem. And there were some boycotts. Santa Fe closed, and they did bus us to other schools. I ended up going to Coleman Elementary. When I got to Coleman, I was every kind of N-word you could imagine. And I fought a little bit. One day I went home and my dad told me, hey, you gonna keep fighting, keep getting kicked out of school or keep getting in trouble? He said, you can allow that to have power over you or not. So the next time it happened, no response from me, it was over. I don't think I heard it from one of my classmates again for a lot of years. But that's kind of how I got my, cut my teeth again on this side. Back in the early 70s, they had something called the Little Dribblers program. It was brand new. And my brother, who was older than me, just so you know, I'm shy, but I'm outgoing. And they were shy and afraid. I wasn't really afraid of nothing. So he convinced me to ask my dad, could we play Little Dribblers? So I said, yeah, we'll go. So I asked, we played, and my first real coach in organized basketball was a guy named Chuck Loomis. He's still here around in the city, I believe. He's an attorney, so he's still here. He was my first real organized sports coach. We excelled at that. But again, I didn't learn basketball from Mr. Loomis. I learned it right there on Carver Park, playing basketball. When I was young, Carver Park was a skating rink on one end. The whole thing was a skating rink. And then again in the 70s, they shut it down and they put 2 basketball hoops up. And I remember distinctly in my head, double rim and a chain net. So that's where we got our chops on the basketball court. And again, all the time is competition. 5 years older, 5 years younger, guys are really getting it done. I remember also, as a young man, we had something called the Superstars competition at Yellow Jacket Stadium. And I told my mother, I'm going to go and I'm going to win the bicycle. So a group of us walked over there, and of course, I won it. So, it was track and field stuff, long jump, high jump, all kind of activity. And again, I don't consider myself, again, you see the football stuff, I'm not a football player. I was an athlete. So I got to junior high. There was nothing remarkable about my junior high athletic prowess. I was one of a group of guys, but I did have some skill. Like I said, I was a pretty good athlete. Jump high, run fast, that kind of thing. So I remember distinctly one day I was trying to dunk a basketball, and I was probably 5'8", 5'7". You can't dunk, you can't dunk. And then I don't know what happened. I started getting my body in better shape, my arms, and I dunked the basketball in the 8th grade. A lot of guys couldn't do it. Matter of fact, nobody I remember could do it at all. So, I had a certain amount of clout for being an athlete. And that was my junior high years. Again, nothing great. In the 9th grade, I played football and basketball those years too. And again, we were all pretty good. But my 9th grade year, let me back up a little bit. In the 8th grade, I was in the band. I played the drums. And the Golden Pride of Cleburne High was a big deal. So I go to Cleburne in my 9th grade year. The football team is not very good. So I stayed in the band. And I played, Xavier, you gonna play football? I'm not playing anything but these drums. So I say that to say this, is that my ability to withstand pain and be patient and be exact was forged in the Golden Pride of Cleburne High, not the football team. Dick Helmkamp and Alan Reed, those 2 gentlemen. Were you in the band? Yes. If you were in the band, you wasn't in the band in 1978, just so you know. I heard the story, so I totally understand. My first year in the band, we did military-style block marching. 4 steps to 5 yards. Turn step, oblique, the whole 9. It was military marching. The very next year we went to Corps style marching. But it was early in the morning, late at night, in the summer, standing still in a certain way, not blinking, soft knees so you don't faint, all those things, okay? And that's how my ability to withstand and be exact was kind of forged. That was my 9th grade year, played basketball, again, pretty good, real good, but I didn't play football. My 10th grade year, I was convinced by some of my peers to come out and try football, so we went out. At that time, I think they had me on the varsity behind some people, but again, here we are again. We had a situation to where we had a, I consider, I'm trying to be politically correct as best I can be, unfair situation because of race. And a lot of the black players did not play. We shut it down. One of those players who didn't play was my brother, Demetrius. He's passed on now and gone to glory, but he was scheduled to be the starting quarterback. His entire senior year was lost to that. So he really he sacrificed for all of us his possible college career. But I was a sophomore, so I had time, but we didn't play. So my first year in high school, the Cleburne Yellow Jackets were, I think, 1-9, not very good. The very next year, my sophomore year, they only won one game, I think. Maybe won one game, lost 8, tied 1. My junior year, I didn't touch it at all again. Still played basketball. Basketball was my thing. Jeff Cody was my coach. Thing about Jeff Cody, what I appreciated about him was he taught us the fundamentals of the game. We hated it because we are used to seeing the loop-de-loop and the whoop-de-whoop. Does that make sense? If I can show a little slang. But jumping high, running fast, and dunking, which we were pretty good at. And he was good at the fundamentals and teaching that. And what happened was, the interesting part of it, we would go to Fort Worth and play Northside High and all those teams, and they were big afros and jumping high and dunking. But when it came down to us winning the game, we won the game because we were more fundamentally sound. We stayed low on defense. We stayed where we were supposed. We played to our assignments, and they looked better. Wrong. Oh man, they look beautiful. But the bottom line is the sports is a team game. Basketball is 5 guys working as one. You can have all that hot dog on your mustard if you want to, but it might not taste very good, if you know what I'm saying. So again, basketball was my thing. My sophomore year in high school, I was on the junior varsity for about 2 weeks, moved me up to varsity, became a starter, all conference, all district at the time. My junior year, same thing, all starter, one of the top point gentlemen on the team, all district. My senior year, again, back up, the football team was not very good. I think we probably won 2 games my junior year. My senior year, we get a new coach, a guy named Chuck Curtis. Chuck, if you knew Chuck, he was a little bit different. And the story goes like this. They introduced him at a basketball game. Somebody asked him, hey, he asked somebody, who was that kid? And he said, well, that's Xavier Warren, but he doesn't play football. And Chuck said in his drawl, he does now. So that's kind of how it goes. So that's kind of how it went. So probably the next week or so, Coach Curtis called me in his office. We had a conversation, and so now I'm playing football. So my senior year, Cleburne had a 180-degree turn. We went 8-2 that year. The 2 losses we had was one team was ranked in the top 10 in the state. The other team was Brownwood, who was ranked in the state, and they ended up winning the state championship that year. So from 1981 on until here recently, I guess in the mid-90s, Cleburne was at the top-notch football team again. So that's kind of how that went on my high school years. And at the same time, I was being recruited. A recruitment process was new to me because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how I was going to college. I had 2 brothers in college at the time. I had a parent who was working, 2 parents who were working, and I didn't know how I was going to make it, how they were going to send me to college. But at that time, I played wide out and tight end. Those were my positions. 2 positions you really can't get hit that hard at, because I'm not a football player. I'm a basketball player. So the recruitment process comes. I'm recruited by some pretty good teams, TCU, University of Houston, Abilene Christian University, and the University of Tulsa. I had grown up around Southwest Conference football, and I was not impressed. I went to TCU on my recruiting trip, and I was there often. So a guy named Bob Junko was my recruiter. I remember him because he was funny. But a guy, so we go there all the time, and we get, they're way too much. Went to the University of Houston for my first visit, and they were doing too much. Guys were snorting cocaine and smoking marijuana, and those things I just didn't do. So I couldn't go there. Went to Abilene Christian University, and they had to go to church every day or every week. I was already churched out, so I wasn't having that either. But the thing about Abilene Christian University, on my recruiting trip, I went with a guy named Robert Boo Jones. Y'all might know Boo Jones too. We went together. And Wilbert Montgomery was a top running back in the NFL at that time for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was my recruiter. So he's showing everybody around, we're talking stuff, and the basketball team was in the gym playing basketball. And I think Boo said, hey, X, my nickname X plays basketball. And he said, well, X, get there, let's play. So I went out there and I lit them up. So they offered me a dual scholarship, basketball and football. But as you can see, my body never grew into a basketball player. This is my body. This has always been my body. It's the same one. When I was 6, it looked like this. I was portly, and I'm portly now. So when you see me, this is me. But I went to University of Tulsa on a football scholarship as a wideout. But at the time when they recruited me, I was 6 foot, and I weighed about 190 pounds. Already way too big for a wideout. So I got to the university, and I'm 17. That picture you might see up here, I'm 17 years old in that picture. Not a football player. Never been through two-a-days. None of that stuff. So I was uncomfortable at playing football. I'm on a campus with grown men. Some of these seniors were, 24, 25 years old. And I'm just a kid. So the rigors of college football were way too much for me. It was too much. My first year was HE double hockey sticks because I was out of position. They moved me to a defensive back. I didn't know how to backpedal. The position coach was a guy named Jay Kane. We called him Cocaine because we thought he was crazy. But anyway, my whole summer was about doing up down. If you know what an up down is, you run it in place and the coach blows the whistle and you hit your stomach, you jump back up. My whole summer of 1982 was that. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So that's how my summer went. And again, I called home a lot. I want to come home. You can't come home because we can't afford for you to come home. You got to stay. So, and again, so I kept growing up and getting bigger and bigger. They moved my position, like I said, moved to a defensive back. They had me as a corner or a safety, and I was out of position. And so the spring of 1983, I'm trying to get there quickly, they moved me to linebacker. That was better because I had ballooned to 225. At that time, that's big. I was 6'1", 225. That's a big linebacker anyway. So it fit my skill set a lot better. Quick feet, smart, smart. So it fit my skill set a lot better. And my head coach at the time, a guy named John Cooper, he's in the College Football Hall of Fame, coached at Ohio State. You can look him up if you want to. He would always get on to me about what I was looking at. So you have certain reads. So I said, what are you looking at? X Warren, what are you looking at? I'm looking at down the quarterback to pitch. You're looking at the quarterback. Coach, I'm looking down the quarterback to pitch because I was always in on the play. So that worked out pretty good for me. So my first year, like I said, I got a red shirt. If you know what a red shirt is, that's where you sit out and get yourself ready for the next season. And again, my body got better, but it still wasn't perfect because the game came easy in my head. And I'm a prime example of way too much talent and not enough hard work. Does that make sense? It came too easy for me. Therefore, I didn't work hard enough for it, which was really my demise when I got to Pittsburgh. But at the same time, in my head, I'm never a football player. I didn't even want to play. I wanted to go home, but he wouldn't let me come home. I had to stay. At the University of Tulsa, at the time, it was one of the top 50 universities in the country, and it still is. The student enrollment at the University of Tulsa when I was there is about the same right now. I don't want to give, hey, I'm going to give a commercial for them because I still go there a lot and I'm still closely related to the university, closely related. So it has about 4,500 students. That's it, Division I school. So anyway, moving to linebacker, I had a lot of fun because I was a special teams beast, if you know what that is. I was on all the special teams, making all the plays. I had everybody hyped up. That's what I really did. And then about 2 games in, I was a second team linebacker. The weak side linebacker got hurt. And the coach knew who he could count on, moved me to weak side. It wasn't popular. A lot of guys got frustrated. But the film don't lie. The eye in the sky will tell you who's doing the right thing. The fortunate part about me was I didn't have enough time to learn a lot of bad habits. Guys taking bad steps, going in the wrong place, not being able to read, not being smart. So I played a lot. I was the second leading tackle on the team that year as a redshirt freshman. The very next year, as my redshirt sophomore year, I lit it up. All conference, leading tackle on the team. Second in the defensive player of the year in the conference voting. I lit it up. It came way too easy because here I am, showed up as a wideout 2 years ago. Now I'm all conference and should have been the defensive player of the year. Came too easy, didn't work hard enough. Very next year, broke my arm, missed the entire year. So I missed it. And let me go back just a little bit about my high school. I only played 7 high school football games. That's it. Got a scholarship. Way too easy. Didn't appreciate it. As a wideout. Went to college, never playing this position, all conference. Way too easy. Didn't appreciate it. Didn't work hard enough. So I missed all of my junior year. My senior year, lighten it up again. The summer of my senior year, I was way overweight. I ballooned to about 265. Because I had really mentally checked out. But I'm a senior, team is counting on me, and again, I'm athletically superior to most of these guys, so I can get it done. All of the conditioning tests, lit them up. So I got down to about 240, 250. That's still very big, but I'm lighting it up. So in my senior year, I got hurt again. I had nerve damage in my neck. About the 7th game of the season. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you what date. It was October the 4th of 1986. And I'll tell you why that day is important in a minute. October 4th, 1986, against Cal State Fullerton on ESPN. But anyway, hurt myself, never played again in college. So I was about done. Again, I went back and had a surgery on my right arm. I had a metal plate in my arm from my broken arm from '85. So I was pretty much done. I was shutting it down. I'm in the dorm, about to graduate. Some guys, hey, X, the Steelers are here, man, they want to look at you. Looking at you meaning they're going to poke and prod you. We talked about slavery earlier. NFL was slavery. I'm saying it on record, especially back then, and it probably still is now. Because you'll see my checks, two of my checks in a few minutes if you want to look at them. One of them was for $1, the other was for $100. But anyway, a slave was probably more valuable than that. So I'm less than a slave. They make you think that you're free and you're not. That's worse. But anyway, as I digress. So maybe lose my, where was I? Maybe. Steelers. Okay. So the Steelers came to test me. And I was in a sling at the time because I had just had surgery. But, I said, well, let me go out there and run and jump. Ran, jumped, everything was beautiful. They said, hey, man, we'll be calling you. So I come home. I had graduated, and I'm at home, and I'm working at a residential treatment home out here called Odyssey Harbor. It's shut down now. I was working part-time at the Tarrant County Juvenile Detention Center at the time. Got a phone call. Xavier Warren, do you remember me? We tested you at Tulsa. We got a pending strike, but we're bringing guys in. We want you to come in. And so when do I need to be there? He said, we need you here this week. I said, I'll be there. Not wanting to play, but just giving it a chance, okay? So I went up there, and they had all these promises. We had to sign these contracts. My contract is over here, if you see. And you'll see how much I made. I didn't make all of it, but that's what the contract was for. And there's a $1 check that I never cashed. That was just to get the ball rolling. Does that make sense? They had to get it started. I did to get me on paper somehow for $1. But anyway, so I got to Tulsa, and got to Pittsburgh. It was Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where we had our training camp. Normally it's in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, if you know that area. But anyway, they told us, they made us all these promises. You're gonna pass. If you pass the physical, you sign your contract. We're not gonna cut anybody. This, that, and another thing. First day I got in camp, they were cutting people. Cutting means letting you go home. Fired, yeah, you got to go. So, and again, I'm now moved to a different position. They moved me to a nose tackle. I've never played with my hand in the dirt. That's like on the defensive line. Never done it before. It's a different kind of football than playing a linebacker. You got time to look at stuff and read and then manage yourself. But nose tackle is face-to-face, snot, blood, contact every play. So I struggled. You mentioned Joe Green. Joe Green was my position coach. And he smoked a big stinky cigar and cussed like a sailor. But he's Joe Green, you know. So on that staff also was a guy named Tony Dungy. You may know him too. He's on the staff too. But I'll wrap that up in a minute about Tony Dungy in a few minutes. But anyway, so but they could see that my skill set was more on the outside. So I was listed as a nose tackle, but I really played defensive end, special teams, and those kind of things. So to make a long story even longer, my very first game was against the Atlanta Falcons. Made a sack, had a pretty good game. Next game was against the Los Angeles Rams, had a pretty good game. My next game was against the Baltimore Colts, still the Baltimore Colts before they left, had a decent game, and then the bottom started falling out. Guys were coming back. Again, you are just a piece of property. Who do we need this week? Do we need more defensive backs or more defensive ends? So what they do is they put you on waivers or cut you or fire you in order to fill the need at the time. Now, the product you see of the NFL now is not the product that we grew up in, that we came up in. That's a different product. Even the way they practice is different. So don't judge today's standards by the NFL of the 1980s. It's different. So when I finally got let go, they cut me a check for $100 and let me know that my rights officially belong to the New England Patriots. Not these New England Patriots. Those New England Patriots who were terrible, horrible. And the hard part about it, I had a pocket. At the time, I had what I consider a pocket full of money. I made about $15,000, $16,000 in a couple of months. So at the time, it was a lot of money. You know, I didn't have any bills. You know, I was living in an apartment with another guy. You know, it was easy. So when it was time, and I already had a pretty new car that my folks bought when I was a senior, so I was ready to come home. So that's kind of how it went for me. Again, I was never a football player. I never loved the game. I never wanted to play. I did it as a means to an end in college just to get a college degree because I had to, because he wouldn't let me come home. I did it for Pittsburgh simply because I wanted the experience. If I would have loved the game, I could have probably I had the physical talent and ability to play for several years. I just didn't have the mental want to in my heart. I never wanted to play. High school, college, or pro. I brought up the name Tony Dungy because he was on that staff at Pittsburgh. At the University of Tulsa, Lovie Smith was on the staff at Tulsa. You might quite be possibly looking at the only guy in America who played for two coaches, the first two black coaches to coach in the Super Bowl. You may be looking at me, so take a good look. I can't think of anybody else who that would be who played for Tony at the time, played for Lovie, and they both were Super Bowl head coaches at the same time in the same game. All right. So that's kind of how my story goes. Right now, I am the special education behavior interventionist for the Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. Now, what that does is everything, okay? What I primarily do is I ensure that the rights of special ed students are not violated in a variety of ways. I also sit on a number of committees in the school district, diversity committee, mentor groups, a number of things. So I do all things special ed, all things general education, all things attendance in my school district. I want to thank the committee for inviting myself. I'm gonna speak on behalf of Rodney too, to have us out here. I knew Rodney from afar. He's 10 years older than I am. I knew his mother. And that's how I know him. But again, East Cleburne is rich with former athletes, some better than I ever thought about being. But again, I was in a pretty good situation with 2 loving parents who didn't give up on me, 2 loving parents who gave me the spanking, well, really one who gave me the spanking, the other one who talked about giving the spanking. And, and that's kind of how it went. So and again, Reverend Wright and Dr. Dollarhide kind of said it, we're standing on the shoulders of so many other folks. I am, we are. I come back to Cleburne often, probably once a week to go to church with my dad and the rest of my family. So Cleburne is still in my blood. People ask me who I root for. I really root for only 2 teams. That's the Cleburne Yellow Jackets and the Tulsa Golden Hurricane. I don't root for anybody else. I don't wear anybody else's stuff. Just so you know, I don't wear Pittsburgh stuff because that's not my team either. So again, if you have any questions about what I do and how, I left some stuff out on purpose. You can look at my stuff and find out. But my story again is extraordinarily ordinary. All right? So that's kind of how I go. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Okay, let us give both Rodney and X another hand. And for all of our speakers tonight, and I think they both showed us that the discipline that it takes to get anything done. We appreciate that, and thank you for it.